welcome back to False Count Radio, as we're joined live on the air by the man who's about to start his own radio show in May, which is called The Last Call. Let's welcome the Sandman to the broadcast. How are you today?
Yo, I'm good. Hey, that's a good name, Corey. Last Call. I like that.
It's very catchy and very fitting, I have to say.
Yeah, I like it a lot.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit of what to expect with your show starting in May?
Why don't you tell me? You seem to know more than I do.
Of course, you're not just into wrestling, so of course you're going to be talking a lot of sports, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, sports, politics, like anything that you want to talk about. I'm well-versed in numerous subjects.
Definitely. So you never know what to expect on The Last Call then. Hell, you may even be talking tax time next year. Who knows? But we have some great questions lined up for you. I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question at this time. And the first question is actually, what are some of your memories of being the Surfer Sandman in the Eastern Championship Wrestling?
You know what it is? It's kind of like if you were a little kid and you were, I don't want to be politically incorrect, but if you, like, all right, let's say something bad happened to you when you were a little kid and you, like, wipe it out from your memory. That's wiped out from my memory.
Dang.
It really is. I mean, I would have to go to a psychiatrist or a hypnotist and have them, like, bring up those memories.
Dang. Juice and Jobber, go ahead.
Right. How are you doing today, Sam? This is Juice and Jobber. Much pleasure to have you on the show today. And the first question I want to know is, what are your memories of your feud with Cactus Jack back in 1995?
My biggest memory was him going into Todd Gordon's office and saying to Todd Gordon, I'm not going to, because for the people that don't know, my real name is James Douglas Fullington III. My nickname's Hack, which my grandmother called me until she died. My parents call me Hack. All my kids call me Hack. My 6 kids call me Hack. You know what I mean? So, and then I'm like the Sandman. So I'll refer to myself in the third person as Hack, or I can refer to myself in the third person as James, or the first person I guess would be Sandman. But in the third person Hack, Cactus Jack went into Todd Gordon's office at 10th and Sampson Street, the first jeweler ever on Jewelers Row in Philadelphia, which, and if anyone knows anything about diamonds, Jewelers Row is like the place to buy your stuff. He went into his office and he's like, hey, you got to tell Hack to stop hitting me so hard. He goes, and then he said, I'm not going to wrestle him again unless if he drinks before the match. And then Todd's like, what, are you kidding me? He knocked me out in that death, whatever, I guess it was a death match, something where you get pinned and you have to stay down for 10.
Death match.
He knocked me out in that match, knocked me cold. I don't remember any of the match. Woke up in the hospital the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning. They asked me, like, who the president was, and I said, like, John F. Kennedy. And they asked me, like, what city I was in. I didn't know the city. She goes, go back to sleep. I don't remember that. This is what my wife tells me because she was in the room. And then about 3 o'clock later the next day, then I had my faculties a little bit more together, and then they would release me. So I had never really heard Cactus at all. So Cactus goes into Todd's office, and Todd's my best friend in the world. But Todd's playing it politically correct. He's like, well, okay, I'll talk to him, Cactus, I'll talk to him. So the next time I had to wrestle him, which was maybe a week later or something, we were in a place called Glen Olden. I don't remember the name of the arena. It was like a boys' club or something. So I never went into the locker room or anything. Me and Cactus were the main event. I hung out in the graveyard across the street, me and Missy Hyatt. We hung out in the graveyard. We might have been doing a little bit more than hanging out and drinking, you know, and having some fun. And then by the time my music plays, I'm like 3 sheets to the wind. So I go into the ring, so I didn't give Cactus the chance because they had a real small locker room right then. And if he saw me drinking then, maybe it would have caused a problem. But I turned it right on his ass. I went out into the ring and I said, yo, can you guys people believe this? Cactus Jack went into Todd Gordon's office. I was loaded. Went into Todd Gordon's office this week and told him that I'm hitting him too hard. So that was kind of my way of baby facing myself against like Cactus Jack, because he was a big baby face too. It was really a baby like kind of war, but I needed a way, and he gave it to me. He just gave me the opening, you know. So I never went into the locker room, went right to the ring, and put all the heat on Cactus. And I was in there, and his music played. What you gonna do? Not come out? He's got to come out. And he was hot.
Dang.
Oh, man, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely.
Yeah, he was hot, but yeah, that's the only guy ever. And the only other complaints I ever got about being stiff were from Van Dam, because one time I grabbed him by his tights, and I went to throw him in the ring, and I ripped his tights. And Raven saying, like, when I shoot you from corner to corner, like, I'm shooting him too hard. He's like, don't shoot me so hard. I'll go take the bump myself. And Raven, like, taking a bump, Raven, I'm like, ooh, ah. You know, because Raven used to come in the back and be like, I remember back in, like, I think it was WCW, and Raven would come in the back and, like, Fit Finley. If you, like, a guy like Fit Finley, you got to have so much respect for him, because he can have a match anywhere in the country in front of any kind of people. He like him against like Steve Regal or something like that, or like I could take Steve Regal's place, because I learned from Regal when I was in WWE that you could work a whole match off of just working the guy's fingers and take one bump at the end of the match. So Raven would come back and he'd be like, oh, I took 2 bumps, and Philly would be like, oh, that's way too much, brother. That's way too much. And then we got them. And even before that, before Raven left, it got to the point in ECW to where Raven, he had like the meanie, he had my wife, he had my son, he had Stevie Richards, he had somebody else in there, to where he would never bump. All the other guys would do the bump, and then we'd do like 3 different sets of false finishes and use all the people. It's like if you're a regular fan and you're watching a match and me and Raven are wrestling, once, like, the interference starts, like Stevie, then I do something to Stevie, then the meanie comes in, I do something to him, then Nova comes in, I do something to him, then Raven comes to grab me for something, boom, I catch him with something quick, boom, then Lori would throw Tyler in there, and then, I faced off with Tyler, I'm worried about Tyler, and then Raven would hit me from the back and hit me with a finish. Or hit me with his even flow or whatever it was. You know, so we would have a standard bet, like if you were like doing the NCAA championship pool, of how many bumps, like the under over that Raven would take during a match, and it was usually around 1.5 to 2. And that's, I mean, look, if you can get over and don't have to bump, more power to you. That means the longer your career is going to be. And
I would agree with you on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to. Save your body.
I worked a match not too long ago, and I think I took 2 bumps in the match and had the crowd on their feet the whole time just because I worked them. So I totally understand what you're saying.
A lovely thing.
Exactly. Alex, go ahead.
First off, Sandman, this is Alex R. here, and I wanted to say it's a pleasure to talk to you, as you're one of my favorites in the business. So I guess my question for you is, what was your relationship with, Nancy Benoit like, or woman, as she was your valet?
Oh, what are you kidding me? That's so funny that you bring that up, because I was talking about it earlier today with one of my sons, my youngest son. He was watching, believe it or not, we got VCR tapes, and my youngest son is 10, Oliver. Ty now, the guy that actually did the kid that did the angle with us, he's 20, He's in the other part of the house watching the Flyers game right now, the playoffs, which I really wish that was. But Nancy was the best because she had Kevin Sullivan, and she learned from Kevin Sullivan, and Kevin Sullivan was pretty much like a Paul Heyman, like a maybe a Dusty Rhodes, except if he was booking himself. You know what I mean? He was like a great innovator. You know what I mean? So Nancy learned a lot from him, and then Kevin. It's a real weird story how Paul hired Kevin, Nancy comes in, and then Paul hired. We lost some talent. I forget who it was, to WCW or WWF back then. And we lost some talent, so Paul's like, you know what, we're gonna bring in like Rey Mysterio, and we're gonna bring in Eddie Guerrero, and we're gonna bring in like the Benoits and stuff like that like got that whole group started. That was kind of like Kevin. I'm not sure if I know it wasn't Todd's idea because I talk to Todd every day, but yeah, they made the change Kevin made the change from bringing like the Mexicans in, because even though he wasn't the booker, he was kind of like everybody respected him. You know what I mean? I mean, he couldn't work his way out of it. He's like me. He couldn't work his way out of a paper bag, but he knows how to get over, and he knows how to get other people over, and he was very, very good at that. So I remember his last night when he was leaving to go to WCW, he signed I think it was like $368,000 a year contract with WCW. The night he left is the night I ended up getting Nancy that night or the night after, and Kevin had been around for a while, and Kevin pulled me aside. He's like, listen, kid, you got it. I'm giving you my wife, because Paul asked me what to do with her. I can't bring her to WCW yet, which in a year from then, he did end up bringing her once he got a little bit more stroke. He goes, listen, at all these guys in the soccer room, he goes, I think you deserve her and you can work with her well. And I was like, I was like a kid, like talking about like Joe DiMaggio, you know what I mean? So I was like, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And then I kind of let Nancy helped school me on working on things. And the best idea she ever came up with is when I did the the Dreamer, the blind angle with Dreamer when he hits me with the cane and puts a cigarette in my eye, which everybody believed. It was Nancy's, because I wanted to go throughout the crowd bleeding and everything. She goes, no, we're not going to do it that way. She goes, you're going to go up with a cigarette. He's going to put the cigarette in. He's going to push the cigarette towards your eye. Then he's going to swing the cane or however the heck it went. And then I'm like, all right, then I'll roll out and I'll go run through the crowd. She goes, no. She goes, you're going to lay there. She goes, you're going to lay there, and every match I always go to it, so like the pregnant pause, she says, I'm going to look at you. Dreamer's going to look at you. Right after it happens, and then Nancy looks at Dreamer. Dreamer looks at me. Nancy looks at me. Dreamer looks at Nancy. Just that little bit of pause that put like a reality into it. And then they bought it so much when I went through the back. Todd and Paul, I don't know who it was, either Todd or Paul, they were like, all right, we're going to take you out through the crowd, even though we didn't come in through the crowd. But they ended up taking me out through the crowd with like a bloody towel on my head or something like that, and everybody believed it. And it was, and the reason that whole angle got over so much. And then I came back blind like a month or 2 months later. Nobody had seen me because, I didn't live in Philly, and I lived down in the suburbs of Philly, in the rich suburbs of Philly and stuff. And it just worked out real good, and most of it was because of Nancy.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. What are your thoughts on your WCW run as the Hardcore Hack?
It is what it is. I mean, they signed me in Dallas Page who got me signed. Paul Lee had promised me, my deal with Paul was we didn't have a contract. We had a handshake agreement that I would be his highest paid player in his game. I found out he paid Sabu $1,000 more than me. Like, I think it was $14,000 to $15,000 for a pay-per-view in Pittsburgh. And then once I found that out, I called Todd. I remember I was driving from like Dayton, Ohio to Cincinnati, Ohio, and I was pissed. So then once I got to Cincinnati, I flew back to Utah, and then I called Raven. I was like, you know what? Screw Paul Lee. I want to go to WCW. What can you do for me? Raven's like, well, he's like, Hack. He goes, no, he didn't even say Hack. He calls me Knucklehead or whatever. He's like, listen, Knucklehead. He goes, I don't have no stroke. He goes, but the last 3 times that I met Dallas Page 3 times, like at Raven's birthday, Page's birthday, and somewhere else, and me and Page just got along great. So he goes, listen, he goes, I said, well, where are you guys at today? He goes, Casper, Wyoming. I said, well, you know what? I'm going to take a flight to Casper, Wyoming. He goes, all right, I'll see you there. Little did I know that anybody that lived in Atlanta, they were flying Delta. They were flying Delta to Utah, Utah to Casper. So I call up on the phone. I get a ticket. I race down to the airport. I walk down, and it was Rick Rude and Dallas Page standing there talking to each other, and because they were on my same flight to Casper, Wyoming. And I was like, and I couldn't say to Rick, I was like, hey, Dallas, can I pull you aside, talk to you? Because Rick had been in ECW for a couple of years, and me and Rick were great friends, so it wasn't like I was going to be like, yo, Rick, I can't talk in front of you. I was like, yeah, Dallas, I want to leave ECW. He goes, you just told me like months ago you would never leave ECW. I said, well, things have changed. Dallas says to me, because I think he didn't want to say in front of Rick that, listen, I'll get you hired, no problem, because Dallas got, if there was 110 guys in the locker room, Diamond Dallas got 30 of them hired, because him and Eric Bischoff were friends, and because Bischoff got that deal in Orlando for him, that's what skyrocketed Bischoff to like the president of the company. And Diamond Dallas was cool with Bischoff when Bischoff was a nobody. So when Bischoff got power, Dallas got power. So the next day, Dallas calls me. He goes, listen, I'm sending a ticket for you. There'll be a limo to pick you up. It was September 8th or September 9th. Flew into Atlanta, got in a limo. They took me to, it wasn't the Turner building. It was another building at that point because they had been switching over. It wasn't like the CNN building, but I went in, talked to Eric Bischoff, 15 minutes out of a $750,000 deal done. So this is like September 9th. September 10th, they sent me a $10,000 signing bonus, which was part of my deal. September 11th, they sent me to go piss at a place in to take a drug test in a place right in, because I was living in, I had a house in Philly, a house in Utah, and a house in Florida then. So I was at my house in Florida, so they told me to go to some place off of like Woodersdale, Mabry in like Florida, I think. And then went and pissed for him, and then I sat until March. They signed me. They were paying me $5,000 a week. And if Kevin Nash never got the book, I might have done my whole 3 years there and never even showed up on TV. So they signed me for $5,000 a week, and I sit until March, and then Kevin Nash gets the book. The first move that Kevin Nash made was to tell J.J. Dillon to call me. So I get a call on Sunday night at like 7:15, 7:30 from J.J. Dillon saying, yo, they want you for Nitro in Minneapolis the next day. I'm like, and he says, bring everything that you used to, which is like cigarettes, beer, a cane, and all that shit. So I couldn't do the cigarettes, couldn't do the beer. They left me the cane, and Dusty ended up giving me the barbed wire. You know what I mean? Because Dusty had some influence there. And then I only worked for him from like March 6th to July 11th or 12th, because I remember I bought another house. I bought my parents' house that day. The day I bought my parents' house is like the next day I got released because I got hurt in that junkyard match that they had, and it hurt my neck. And then that was the next night. Finley got his whole leg ripped up in a hardcore match, like going to a table or something, and they thought he was never going to wrestle again. So then I ended up buying a house or something. So I worked for him for 3 months. They gave me any kind of leeway that I wanted. Nash let me do whatever the hell I wanted, and then they fired me like October 10th of the I signed like September 9th. They fired me October 10th. And then the company was so stupid, then they ended up paying me the whole 3 years. They paid me $5,000 a week for 3 years. And I was already working for Paul Lee by October 31st. I did my comeback in ECW Arena, and he was paying me like $3,500. So I was doing like, for like 2 years, I was doing like $8,500 or $8,000, $9,000 a week. It was the best.
Dang.
But the time they're wrestling was really good too, because all I worked with was Bam Bam or well, Knobs sucked working against Knobs because he's real clumsy. But he's one tough SOB, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
But besides that, I worked a lot with Raven, and I worked a lot with Bammer.
Understandable. We actually have a caller from the 503. I think they have a question. You want me to take the call?
I don't care.
Caller, you're on the air with the Sandman. Go ahead.
Hello?
You're on the air with the Sandman.
Hey, Sandman, as a wrestler myself, I wanted to know, I think the tag team division is a dying breed. What's your opinion on it?
To tell the honest God's truth, I don't watch, so, but the last time I was working for WWE, yeah, tag teams are more for like, you know, like to stick like two superstars together, like for a happenstance. Like if somebody's got a feud against somebody, somebody's got a feud against somebody else, then you intertwine them and then you have a tag or something like that. But yeah, tag team is not like the way it used to be, like in like the old Atlanta days with like Arn and Ole as tag team champs.
Definitely. Caller, do you have any more questions?
What's Corey? Is that Corey?
This is JT.
Oh, JT, this is JT Stevens.
What's up, dude? What's up?
What's you guys' opinions on the Morrison and Miz storyline coming up?
Honestly, I'm not watching WWE. Just like Sandman said, I don't watch it either.
Yeah, I have no idea what you're saying.
I don't watch WWE. It gets boring.
But I think those two used to be tag partners, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what that tells me is if they're putting them two to fight against each other, I would say that the Miz will be out of a job in less than 3 months.
Okay.
Because that's what they do. When you have tag partners and then you turn one on the other, and obviously fucking Morrison's fucking way better than the Miz, so the Miz is gone.
Definitely. We'd like to thank you for calling in.
Okay.
All right. Juice and Jobber, go ahead.
All right, I've...
Okay, he just cut out. I'm going to ask you for him. What exactly happened? Oh, wait, you there, Jason?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead. You cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I actually have an interesting question, something I'm sure several are wondering and wanting to know. What exactly happened that night in Florida when you got naked?
What are you kidding me? I've been naked in like every town that ECW. Oh, you're talking about Pensacola? Yeah, I was at Tom Landry's. I was at Tom Landry's restaurant doing oyster shooters with him, which is vodka and like clams. vodka and oysters. I was doing oyster shooters with Tom Landry. Me, Tom Landry, Fonzie, Guido, and maybe a couple other guys. And this was like at 12 o'clock. And then I got a gallon of vodka and drank most of that before I went to the ring. Made a total menace of myself in the back. And, yeah, just the old Sandman drunk and get naked thing. You know what I mean?
Nice. Alex?
Yeah, hey, Sandman. We were talking, you kind of mentioned the tag teams earlier, and I have to ask you, I guess, whose idea was it for you to tag with Too Cold Scorpio?
Paul Heyman's.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. I'm going to see Scorpio in England. I'm going to England tomorrow, so I'll get to see Scorpio Friday morning because he lives there in Florida. And actually, him and Frank Gooden are starting an indie promotion right there in like Celebration, right next to Disney.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll get to spend some time with Scorp, but you got to think about it. And in retrospect, I didn't know it then, but in retrospect, you had the Public Enemy leaving, you had all these guys like Stone Cold coming and going, Cactus coming and going. It was like Paulie was putting all his eggs in one basket when it was Two Gold and me, because I had the tag titles and the heavyweight title, and he had the TV title and the tag titles. So we had all the titles in between both of us, which never had happened like in ECW. So, and we were like the most over. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like dancing. It's like Dancing with the Stars. And you use your certain people for certain things, and you get your people that are the most over, you put them in the opportune situation, and that's what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I wanted to ask you, what do you feel in your mind caused the death of ECW?
Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman?
Yeah, totally Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman going nuts like spending. Paul Heyman spent like over $2 million of his dad's retirement fund to fuel that company. See, we weren't getting paid to be on. We had to pay to be on Madison Square Garden Network. We had to pay to be on the Sunshine Network. We had to pay to be on like WGN. I don't even know if we were on WGN, but we had to pay to be on TV wherever we were, and we never had any other advertise. If you ever noticed any of those old shows, all the advertisements was ECW wear, like T-shirts or whatever. You know what I mean? So we didn't have a lot of advertisers back then. And Paulie's doing shit stupid like spending $14,000 because Jake the Snake missed his plane. For a pay-per-view somewhere. I want to say like Cobb County, Georgia or something, but maybe it wasn't there. You know, spending $14,000 to privately fly Jake the Snake to a pay-per-view when we didn't need him anyway. You know what I mean? Paul he had no sense of, you know what I mean? It's like going out to a bar and having $20 in your pocket and buying around for the whole bar. As soon as you get in there, then you're broke. You know, Paul, at least Todd had fiscal sanity. Paul just, he didn't care. It wasn't his money. Todd cared because when he had the company, it was his money.
Makes sense. Definitely.
Right. What are your thoughts on your XPW run, including your feud with Pogo the Clown?
Yeah, just another company.
Nice.
Pogo's a good guy. You know what I mean? Pogo's a good guy. Rob, whatever. What was his name? Rob Black.
Rob Black.
They always treated me with fucking the absolute utmost respect. I used to get to if they had a locker room and the locker room was small, I would go dress with the girls. You know what I mean? I'd be dressing with like Lizzie Borden and like whatever, like porno stars like he had in there and all that. And he knew it was cool because I could care less about these girls, you know what I mean? I was probably still married or whatever, but I always cared about partying with the boys. I didn't really care about women too much while I was on the road. And he would put me in the locker room with his who was he married to?
Lizzie Borden?
Was it Lizzie? Who ended up screwing the one guy and
Messiah?
His thumb cut off? Whatever that story is. I don't know. What's up with Rob Black? Anybody heard from him?
Actually, Rob Black, the rumor was he was getting out of prison the exact same weekend as the XPW One Night Stand, but he was told that he wasn't allowed to be there and he would be escorted out by the police.
If he bought a ticket?
Yeah, they didn't want him anywhere near the event because a lot of the boys have heat with them, apparently.
Yeah, no, that's Kevin. Kevin Kleinrock's doing all that. They don't care about the boys. The boys don't have heat with whoever's paying them. You know what I'm saying? The boys aren't controlling that. Kevin Kleinrock's controlling that, and Kevin's a great guy. Kevin has always been, like, top-notch with me. I couldn't deal with, because, like, dealing with Black was like dealing with Paulie. So that's why I always dealt with Todd. And so when, like, my first time dealing with XPW, I just dealt with Kevin Kleinrock, and Kevin's, like, the best. He's totally professional. He makes sure you're taken care of. You know, he really took care of me well, and I always thanked him good for it.
Definitely. What do you think of the atmosphere at the One Night Stand event? We actually saved Lizzie, Lizzie Valentine against Pogo.
I don't remember it.
You don't remember? You don't remember me picking you up at the airport for that event?
All right, I remember that part where we stayed in the hotel there, but I don't remember.
Remember because we picked on my buddy.
What I did in the ring.
We picked on my buddy Matt the whole time because he couldn't drive properly.
Oh wait, this is the last time I was there with Terry Funk and Raven and all those guys.
If you remember, we picked on Marky Mark because of his driving.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And then we picked on him. And then we picked on him the following weekend here in Portland.
Yeah, but what? Yeah, right. And then, but I forgot all about it, that they were doing some girls thing before mine, which even brought me out to the ring, you know what I mean?
They did that.
All about it.
Lizzie Valentine came out, cut a promo, stating that she wasn't scared anymore, and Pogo came out and was going to beat her up, and you came out from the back.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't remember that much.
Understandable. I have the DVD, which can actually be purchased, ladies and gentlemen, through BigVisionEntertainment.com. Cheap plug there. Alex, go ahead.
Well, first off, Sam, I just wanted to ask actually I guess, which show did you actually prefer to be part of around 2005? The Hardcore Homecoming show, which was promoted by Shane Douglas, or the One Night Stand pay-per-view?
What do you think?
Well, the one
What do you think?
The One Night Stand because of the money, I would assume?
Well, it's a grander stage. You know what I'm saying? It's like being on Broadway to be in the Paramount studio to film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, definitely you want to be on. Even though for Shane's show, I don't even know who I wrestled. But for the One Night Stand with the Dudleys. Okay, but for the one for Shane Douglas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you talking about the One Night Stand when me and Dreamer tagged against the Dudleys?
Yeah, with the Dudleys.
Yo, if you ever go back and look at that match, you will see what actual brilliance, absolute brilliance that match is. Tommy and it was most, and here I'll tell you something. It was Johnny Ace. I don't know if anyone knows who Johnny Ace is. Johnny Ace is Tommy Dreamer's boss. Johnny Ace is Vince's right hand man. Johnny Ace makes all the decisions. Johnny Ace sat there at the table and took notes, as Dreamer told me and the Dudley. Well, him and Bubba were like kind of running it, running it, because if you remember, there was like 17 people in that match. There was like there was us four, but there was like
Yeah.
5 different run-ins with
The
another
Impact
11 or
players,
12 people.
Spike.
Yeah, Justin Credible. Yeah, there was still, and then Francine and Beulah. There was like all kinds of runs and stuff like that. That match was like total brilliance, and I really have to hand it to Dreamer because Dreamer just wanted to give anybody that didn't have a match on the show a chance to be as a part of our match.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I get totally lucky at the end. I don't even know it. I don't know how much time is left on the pay-per-view or whatever. But I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm out of here. These guys are all gonna have a love fest. I go up and I walk up the top of the stairs and I turn around and I'm like, oh, here comes Steve. So and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wait for Steve. Steve comes up the stairs, turns around, he goes, hey brother, let's tilt one for the people or something like that. We turned around, put our arms up, the place popped, and then boom, that was the end of the pay-per-view. I'm sure he didn't know it either because he didn't have an earpiece, and we didn't have no producers like right there telling us, you know. So yeah, that all worked out really, really good for me. Ended the pay-per-view. You know, we all knew it.
It's something you couldn't change. You know, knew it was coming, but. At least when you guys were on there, you did it better than what it is now, in my opinion. It was great to at least have some originals.
No, I don't know. I haven't seen the show. I clicked on it. Oh, I didn't click on it. My 10-year-old son did. I don't know, maybe I want to say maybe 3 months ago, and was Matt Stryker announcing. That was the best part of it for me because me and Stryker used to be really good friends. If I was to travel with Van Dam or Sabu, then I'd be traveling with Stryker in between shows when we were on Raw together. When I forget who, maybe he was with, or no, when I wrestled the big show. I don't know, was that ECW, Raw, whatever. Just, I was glad to see that Stryker. Well, but he wasn't happy about it. He thought he could still wrestle, but Taz thought he could still wrestle too in the land of the Giants, but they made him an announcer.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really think that Matt Stryker is poorly used and very underrated. He's always been one of my favorites, but he really doesn't get the push he should get.
Per IQ, well, you got to understand he's probably got the least amount of seniority for one, which means everything. But IQ-wise, he's smarter than any announcer they have. He's absolutely smarter than any announcer they have.
Right.
And he's just as witty as Jerry Lawler.
I have an interesting comment in the chat room that I kind of agree with. Jerry Lawler back in the day used to dub ECW as extremely crappy wrestling, but that's basically what Vince has turned the new ECW in my opinion.
Amen.
So, but we do have just a couple more questions left. I'm going to go ahead and let Alex ask.
Okay. You've mentioned before, Sam, in various interviews that you've been requesting your WWE release since, February 2007, but you had to release, granted, in September 2007. What led you wanting to leave the promotion? Was it because of the traveling, or was it because you weren't used properly? What was the situation behind that?
No, it definitely wasn't used properly. I mean, they totally took it. I only lost I think I lost the whole time I was at the 2.5 years or whatever. I only lost twice on TV. So it wasn't the way they were treating me. It was the travel. The travel was unbearable. Absolutely. Well, it got to the point where if whatever year I started in June, it got to be by February that I was I told Johnny something like they were putting me on the road every week. And everybody knows I don't need to be on the road to make their money, you know what I mean? Just put me on TV. So it took until February where I was like, listen, give me my release or take me off the road and just use me for television. So then Johnny was like, hey, fine. Well, I kind of had Dreamer. I'm not saying I said that to Johnny. Dreamer did. Dreamer's like, Sandman doesn't want to be on the road. And I was telling Mark Carano, which is a great guy too, Mark Carano, that's Johnny Ace's right hand man. Mark Connor's a great guy. And I would say, Mark, do not put me on the road list unless I asked. And then if I asked, he will put me on it. And I would say, no, Mark, I don't want to be on the road for the next month or whatever. You know, but then I could pick and choose, because you'd be doing like a Thursday night in like Wichita, Kansas, where you'd only make $500 for the show. I don't want to be on those shows. I want to be when we're in L.A. in like the Coliseum, or not the Coliseum, wherever the Lakers play, where they'd have a sellout crowd Thursday or Friday night. So they would let Mark and Johnny would let me pick and choose, you know, if I wanted to be on the road that week or not. And then finally got to the point where once they traded me, drafted me to Raw, then I was totally furious. And from right then, every single solitary week I was asking for my release. So then we got to the point where I'd never been to Africa before. This is coming in like September, second week of September. And I told Mark, I told Mark Carano, I was like, Mark, go ahead, you can put me on the African tour. He's like, what? Why? I was like, well, believe it or not, I've never been to Africa. He's like, all right, okay. They put me on the Africa tour, and then I was just like, me, Cena, Carlito, Jeff Hardy, and there's probably a couple other guys I'm missing. We just partied like the whole time there. And then I was like a total mess then. And then I got back, and we did Monday night in Green Bay, because I remember taking some pictures. What was it, Green Bay? Green Bay or Milwaukee or whatever. No, it had to be Green Bay, because afterwards I took some pictures with some Green Bay Packers. And that day, Johnny brought me into his own. This is right where we came back from Africa. Then we had a Monday night. We got back on Sunday. We had a Monday night in Green Bay. And Johnny East called me into his office. He's like, yo, Hack, what's going on? I said, well, Johnny, you know, I really was not happy at all with this company, but after this week that we just had in Africa, I was like, you know what? I feel a little bit better now. I got closer to some guys. And then I had a problem with Jimmy.
Was it Steamboat?
The Dragon, the Steamboat. Yeah. When we were leaving, we were in, before we left there, we were in like Cleveland, Ohio. So we were at a show in like Cleveland, and we had two buses to bring us people that were going to Africa to the airport. And then while we were going from Cleveland to like New York, and then the next morning to Africa. So I was one of the first ones done that night. It was the only time that I was ever on Heat or whatever, the show that's before the show, the live shows or whatever. It was the only time I was ever put on that, and which that pissed me off too. So afterwards, I'm hanging out outside smoking, and like I know they got the two buses. I'm like, you guys got any alcohol in these buses? They're like, no, it was a Sunday night. I'm like, well, can I buy some? They're like, no, you can't buy it. So I walked up the ramp, and I went and talked to some of the security guys that were standing right up the top of the ramp. Two of them had been bouncers in a club right across the street from the place that we were wrestling. I went over, I bought a bottle of vodka, a bottle of Jack Daniels, and 2 cases of beer. It cost me like something ridiculous, like $190 or something like that. Because they never even should have been selling it to me, because you weren't allowed to sell liquor in bulk like that, you know what I mean? So I had the 2 buses parked like back to back. So, like, Vince's limo was on the other side. Then I set up a little bar situation against the wall on my side. So anybody that was on the tour came around, and I had beers for them. I had Jack Daniels and mixers for them. I had vodka mixers for them. And then we get on the plane. Everybody's drinking. Mark Carano's drinking. Jimmy's drinking. The Dragon's drinking. Cena's drinking, Melina's drinking, Carlito, everybody's drinking. And then we land. I have a cigarette in my mouth the whole flight. Not a cigarette. So we land on the ground in New York, and I was if you walked in on the plane in the front, the very first seat on your right was where Jimmy was sitting, and I was in the seat right across from him, but one behind in the second. So we land on the ground. I got a cigarette in my mouth. He turns around and he yells at me in front of like all the boys. Sandman, don't you like that damn cigarette? I'm like, what are you, a fucking idiot? I'm like, I've had this cigarette in my mouth the whole time. You think I'm so stupid to light it on a plane? And then I really started to get on him hard. Actually, I really wanted to snatch him right then. And Cena was in the seat behind me. And Cena grabs him, and he's like, Sandman, because he didn't know me as that guy. He's like, yo, Sandman, just drop it, please, just drop it, because you know that Jimmy was there. He was the only agent on that tour because none of the other agents wanted to go. He's like, just please drop it. And so then, like the third day of the tour, Jimmy takes me off of Steamboat takes me off of the show because he thinks that I'm not capable to perform. So then we get back to Green Bay. Johnny Ace calls me and he goes, "Oh, heck, everything okay?" I'm like, well, it wasn't at first, but everything's okay now. So then I fly from Green Bay to Chicago the next day, and my flight's delayed by 2 hours. I'm so tired because I've been drinking for like 10 days straight. I go and check into a hotel, and then Johnny Ace called me. He goes, Hack. He goes, I don't know what you did, but you got your release. I'm like, oh, yes. I said, why? He goes, I don't know why. He goes, I just told you to call. He goes, I just been told to call you and give you a release. And I was like so relieved. It was like a big burden off my shoulders.
Wow. Definitely understandable. I did want to ask you, with the recent passing of one of your friends, Andrew Tess Martin, do you have any memories?
Another one of my friends, you mean? Another one of my friends?
Yeah.
Like 20 of them in the last 5 years?
Yeah. What are your fondest memories of Tess?
I don't know about fondest, but I remember me and him. I don't exactly remember where we were going, but it was like a 150, 200-mile drive. We were doing 85 miles an hour in something like a Cherokee, something that we rented, and we hit a deer. He was driving. I was like falling asleep because Dreamer had rented like a sports car or something like that, and him and Dreamer used to travel together, so he didn't want to be in Dreamer's sports car because it was too small, because, Andrew's a big kid. And so I was like, all right, well, just come with me. We'll switch up. They'll go with Dreamer, and you'll come with me. But you're driving. He's like, all right. He's like, you son of a bitch. Tess. And then I just remember I was just getting ready to doze off, and then I hear the brakes hit. He puts his right arm out to kind of like if you had like a kid in the front seat, you know what I mean? Just like a reaction to whether it was your girl or not. And I opened my eyes up. We hit this deer. We spun 3 times. Spun 3 times. I don't know how we didn't turn over the vehicle, because it was a Jeep. We spun 3 times. All right, we settled. And he's like, was he calling me Hack or Sandman at that point? He was calling me Hack at that point. He's like, you all right? I'm like, yeah, you all right? We got out, and you got to remember, we were taking the same road to the same highway to the town that everybody else was, and we were in the lead. You know what I mean? So everybody else was driving by, and they saw us standing out there. But then I paced off from where our truck landed to where the deer was, because it was foggy out. It was 61 paces, which is roughly 55, 60 yards. We hit this deer. The deer went flying I mean, we hit it flush to where the thing caved in. Neither front headlight broke, but the radiator was pushed back a foot into the car. We hit the deer. The thing went 61 paces, hit, and then another 20 paces and dropped again, and then like skidded and was laying there on the road. And then I went to I was at his house for New Year's that year, like maybe 2 years ago. Me, Kelly, Stryker, and Stryker was going out with the girl, the light-skinned black girl with the curly hair, who ended up going out with Bobby Lashley later.
Oh, Crystal Marshall.
I can't remember her name. Yeah, Crystal. It was us four. Yeah, we went to test in St. Petersburg for New Year's that year, and Kelly passed out. Kelly and Crystal, or whatever her name was, were drinking champagne, and we were going to the nicest nightclub in St. Petersburg. Test had an area roped off for us and everything, because he knew the bouncers, the owner on the chip. Mm-hmm. And we never even made it into the club because Kelly drank so much that she passed out in between his house and getting to the club.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my good Test memories. And that and Ireland too. Me and Tess, we did like a week tour of Ireland together, mm-hmm. which was totally fun. I was glad he was there. Me, Tess, and Chris Masters. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a tour of Ireland. It was good.
I actually have one more question. I remember you in an interview you were talking about an incident in Japan where I think it was you and Balls Mahoney on the tour, and you were trying to set up for the match, and you said something about japping them and them Pearl Harboring you. Can you tell that story?
That was our first time we were working against Onita and
FMW.
Szechuan Onita, whatever his name is, and we went there, and it was supposed to be like a War Games. Hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.